Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of In the Artist Studio. My name is Nicole Winthrop, and I'm the membership manager here at Museum of the African Diaspora, San Francisco. The series was made possible by generous donations from the Westbridge Foundation, Art Bridges Foundation, MOAD members, and viewers like you. Welcome. While MOAD's physical building may be closed due to the mandatory shelter in place, you can still get your fill of art and artists of the African diaspora. Each Wednesday at 1:00 p.m. Pacific time, MOAD staff members will visit some of our favorite artists in their studios for a rare opportunity to hear from the artists themselves and learn how their work is changing as a result of the quarantine. Please visit our archive of past talks on MOAD's YouTube channel. On behalf of the MOAD board and staff, I'd like to now take a moment to hold space for those whose lives have been lost at the hands of police brutality and systemic racism here and throughout the world. I'd like to say their names: George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, Tamir Rice. On behalf of the MOAD board and staff, I'd also like to acknowledge the indigenous peoples who have stewarded the land we are located. Thank you. In today's program, Senior Director of Education at MOAD, Dimitri Broxton, will speak with artist Kori Newkirk. An Oakland native, Dimitri has over 18 years of experience working in the field of education and the arts. His department's mission is to connect youth, educators, and the public to the historical, cultural, and intellectual contributions of the worldwide African diaspora. Outside of his role at MOAD, Dimitri is an independent curator and practicing artist, and has served as a curator for the city of Berkeley. His artwork has been exhibited internationally and most recently at SF MoMA's Artist Gallery, Untitled Art Fair. And this summer, one of his sculptures was acquired by the Monterey Art Museum in California. Kori Newkirk creates artwork using a poetic combination of images and objects to address issues of place, economy, and politics. Born in the Bronx, raised in Cortland, New York, and based in Los Angeles, Newkirk is known for the tension he creates between the narrative weight of his materials, such as pomade, pony beads, newspaper clippings, and larger strategies of formal abstraction. Newkirk has exhibited both nationally and internationally, and was the subject of a 10-year survey exhibition entitled Kori Newkirk, 1997 to 2007 at the Studio Museum in Harlem. In 2006, Newkirk was included in the Whitney Biennial and the Dakar Biennale. This year, Newkirk will be honored at the 2020 Orange County Museum of Art Gala. Without further ado, let's meet Dimitri and Kori in the Artist Studio.
Thank you so much, Nicole. That was awesome. We really appreciate you. Nicole is our membership manager, and she does a killer job. Kori, I am so excited to be in this conversation with you.
I'm super excited to be here. Thank you so much for even thinking about me and letting me come today to share some thoughts, ideas, images, words with you and all the viewers, all the fans of the institution, and it's great.
Yeah, well, you're one of my personal heroes. I really have looked up to you your entire career as an artist. And, you know, I would say that I definitely became aware of your work through the Studio Museum in Harlem and your you know, the work that Thelma Golden has done to uplift artists of African descent. And you're just one of those people that the very first time I saw one of your pieces, it was love at first sight. I mean, what you do is brilliant. And so just to be able to share this virtual space with you gives me so much joy today.
Oh my goodness. I am back at you. That is so sweet. Yeah, no, that's all I'll say. It's all embarrassing to sort of sometimes hear those things, you know, because I just think all I do, my job is to be in the studio or attempt to be in the studio and to make work, keep my head down, particularly these days. So, you know, I think we often think that no one is ever paying any attention, no one's listening, and it's always nice to know that the efforts that you know, that one puts into sort of sharing these things with the world, that it can be appreciated and that there are people paying attention and listening.
Oh, we're paying attention, and we can't wait to see what you have coming up next. Before I get into that, for sure, where are you joining us from?
I am joining you from my home here in Los Angeles, downtown Los Angeles. I chose not to go to the studio for this, but I will be attempting to head over there yesterday. I just thought it was I wanted something neutral behind me today.
I can understand that. And we're gonna see lots and lots of your work. I have some images prepared, and I understand you have some images. You know, I think your home and your place of home, I've heard you reference it multiple times. I want to add that you were one of our featured guests at the 2019 Engage Symposium at MOAD. We were fortunate to have to host Black Refractions, selections from the Studio Museum on Harlem. And I was thrilled that one of your beaded curtains was included. And so of course we had to have you. So this is my second time getting a chance to talk to you, but I'm glad that I get a chance to talk to you more in depth this time. You talk about home, you talk about your neighborhood often, and the fact that you settled down in what is called Skid Row in Los Angeles. And I just wonder, we spoke a little bit about this before we went live, but you know, how is your neighborhood changing now, you know, in this last 8 months with this pandemic, and then also the shift on, you know, Black Lives Matter really moving to the center of conversations that our nation and really our world is having right now. And I guess I just asked you 3 things about your neighborhood and
I'm not so great with multi-part questions, so let's just try to let's take the first part and let's talk about the neighborhood, and then we'll try to go to the rest. You might need to prompt me a little bit.
I will. I know I think I got excited and I was like, I'm just ask you 5 questions in one.
Yes, I do. I live in what I would term as Skid Row adjacent. It's like a half a block that way where it officially starts. But as you know, I think most neighborhoods, the boundaries between them are a little fluid, right? It's certainly not concrete. It's super fluid. It hasn't, you know, surprisingly, the neighborhood does not feel like it has evolved or changed that much, which can be really reassuring and incredibly frightening at the same time. Of course, there is a preponderance of people wearing masks, but due to the very interesting texture of my immediate neighborhood, I also encounter a lot of people who, for whatever reason, are not protecting themselves and others. So it's just, you know, just trying to figure out how I can navigate through the world at the moment is really interesting, right? There's a lot of interior dialogues. It's very not dissimilar from just my everyday existence of just how do I have to move through the world as a, you know, a tall Black man, and sort of the interior dialogues that, you know, just dealing with that, right? As I'm moving through, like, oh, I can't look that way. Why are they looking at me this way? What's going on over there? What's going on behind me? So all of those things sort of continue, but to just a slightly different outcome and extent. But the conversations are ongoing.
Nice. And, you know, you're someone who, I guess the other side of the question was, your work always has dealt with your identity to some degree, you know, and so, and I will definitely get into those, but at least from my perspective and how I view your work is Blackness has always been this ever-present component of your work that even is encoded within some of the pieces we'll look at in just a minute. But, you know, I'm just curious, has now that these conversations about Black Lives Matter, since they've gone from the conversations we have amongst ourselves or this group that's kind of on the outskirts of society to now, these are front and center questions. I mean, with this new election coming up, you know, our president-elect now has mentioned the importance of Black lives and how Black folks are the ones who put him into office. So, you know, do you see that as something that has changed your work or will change your work or the way you think about it?
You know, that is a great question. Honestly, when I think about that, I'm not sure if the current, that part of what is going on is going to change my work too much. I really think, you know, I've been talking or embedding sort of some of these issues in the work. It's been a large part of the thought process behind the things I do for quite some time. But I also would have to say, because I feel like I've been doing it for a long time, or it's in there, not that it's not important, but there are times when I feel like I have already actually spoken about these things in the work, and I am not always so interested in rehashing that conversation, right? And so in a way, I feel like as important as those conversations are and will always be for me personally, you know, yeah, I feel like some of them I have already addressed and probably will address them again, but often in my head, I just go, well, come on, people, catch up, right? Like, yeah, I don't want that to come off to sound the wrong way, but so that's kind of a little bit of where I am, right? Like it feels at times like that, well, here it is. It is part of the burden and the privilege of being an artist and to deal with those things. So at some point, it is a wonderful privilege to talk about those issues, right? That I have front row access to them and I can sort of talk from a personal place. But at the other side of the coin, it is sometimes quite a burden to have to continue to sort of address these things.
Yes, and I love it. I love it. Kitson King was just getting to actually, I'm just going to read what she said. Our artists are always ahead of the curve in the masses. Of course, you've already tackled these issues, which are not new. And, you know, I think that's an interesting point to make is like, yeah, you've been talking about Blackness and how your body is perceived in the world. I mean, ever since the 90s, as far as I know, and I don't know if you know you were doing that prior to the 1990s through your work, but from what you have been showing publicly.
No, I mean,
yeah,
it's true. You know, I can actually pinpoint exactly where in my practice, in my life, where the shift from sort of making art just about art and my conscious almost avoidance of trying to talk about those personal things and identity and race and all of those things where I was just not, I just was not interested in talking about that in my work. I had other things that I was trying to talk about, but some very wise artist and woman and friend just sort of, you know, just change that in really in like a half an hour. Everything switched from a conversation about what was really important and about the potential for me to talk about some of these things. And so that I can tell you that was 1993. In the spring of 1993, when all of that shifted and I started to realize that I could and should myself talk about some of these things. That's the only way that I could really tell my stories, right? And talk about the reality of my world. Because really, at the end of the day, to use a similar analogy that she used, that someone can always be making these stripy paintings, right? Like someone could make those and they will probably always be awesome, and you know, they'll probably make them much better than I was making them at that time. But until I start to figure out how to talk about myself and the things that are going on, the things that I see, I'm the only one who can make a really good Kori Newkirk about Kori Newkirk. I don't know. It's really kind of, maybe the fog of all those years is clouding the exact thing, but basically I was just almost given permission to understand my own agency, get my own agency, talk about myself, and I think another really important part about that was to really think about it proactively and from a place of self-love, because I think that all of those kind of things have really helped lay a foundation for the direction in which I wanted my work to go and the way in which I wanted to talk about these very, very important issues.
Nice. I want to go back a little bit to, you mentioned the stripe paintings, and I think it's interesting. This is episode 29 of us doing this and talking to artists, and a common thread that I see all the time that I can personally relate to is so many of the artists start as painters, and not just painters, but paint on canvas and oftentimes oil paint, and then a shift happens. And I won't say that you've moved entirely away from painting, but painting is not central to the work that you make. It may show up as appropriate. It's not even showing up anymore.
Well, I think it shows up, but I'm going to push back on that, because as much as I want to, perhaps a younger me would be like, yeah, you're so right. Painting is not in there. But I think as I mature a little bit, it seems to have, reasserted itself in very interesting ways, but it does not necessarily reassert itself in the idea of me with a paintbrush with paint on it. But I think the language of it and the sort of formal qualities are still and always will be very much part of that foundation that I was talking about. But I do like that you think it's not really there. That's good. So then I think that part of the other things that I'm saying about, I always often think I like to be a moving target in some regards, so that I think that just helps to feed into this almost ungraspable understanding of what it is that I do.
Which is absolutely true. And I feel like I need to pull up some images for folks to see, so we could kind of talk about the ungraspable qualities of your work. So just give me a second while I pull these up. I don't think I have any video clips I got to worry about in here. So let's see. So yes, I am gonna start off. Now, how do I get this thing? I always have a problem with this. You're just seeing the image, right? Kori, you there?
Yes, I'm here. Oh,
Okay, are you just seeing the image right now?
Yeah, am I? Yeah, no, I'm just kind of like, woof. I like
Okay, awesome.
Way back. It's awesome.
I wanted to go all the way back with your work, and I'm definitely inspired by the show that you did with the Studio Museum, and so now I'm going to go back a couple of decades for you with this one, but I think definitely going from I think you have the qualities of painting in here within composition and how you're thinking about the space and relationship to a wall. But this piece is not traditional painting. And I would love to hear you talk about this. I definitely think in my head, I see this as part of your journey away from maybe the confines of paint and canvas.
Ooh, that is I think you are entirely correct. I mean, I know that the real the first big break happened prior to this, but in this piece, and this comes from a slightly larger body of work. This is, I think, Untitled Cadillac Prototype. This is from 1997, as far as I remember. It is pomade, the same stuff I put in my hair that has been pigmented jet black. It is directly on the wall of this institution. You know, at that time, I was, you know, still trying to figure out the different ways in which I could talk about who I am, what I am, where I come from, what it means to look like this. And so similar to when I think you talked about my relationship and talking about my neighborhood or a home, you know, I have always felt that it is best to look around your immediate surroundings first. So that has worked really well for me first, and then look out, but really try to figure out how to talk about that stuff with the things that I surround myself with or that are in my immediate vicinity. And so I was really interested in this whole notion of Southern California car culture at that time, having moved from places, you know, New York and via Chicago, where I did not necessarily need a car in the way that one needs a car in Southern California. And so trying to talk about a little of that sort of shock to the system to come to this place and understand that, and looking at my own sort of family history with cars and who drives them and what that means. And so I come from there is a precursor to this, which is an encaustic inlaid painting, which is a family tree made out of Cadillacs, because I have been really interested in the notion of like who drives, particularly a Cadillac, and what that means. Because my father always really loved to have Cadillacs, right? I don't ever remember them being brand new, but there were a lot of Cadillacs when I was growing up. And so I looked at that car as a symbol for not only the family, my immediate family, the larger families that I belong to. It seemed like it was interestingly embedded with lots of questions and issues that I could really dig into, right? Lots of stereotypes, lots of myths around this car, lots of reality there also. And so just trying to figure out how do I combine all of those things, and then also, again, talk about it in a really kind of specific way too, and play with materials, right? So I had been playing with pomade for a few years prior to this. I think it was in my thesis show as well, which was right before this, because, you know, one day I was going to get dressed to go to school or something and opened up an old jar of pomade, put it up to my nose, and immediately all of these imagery came to mind, and memories were flooding my head, you know, because scent is such has such strong ties to things. And so that triggered me to sort of think about this as a material, how I can best use it, can I deploy this? Because with the understanding that if this is doing this to me, that there is bound to be someone else out there in the world that might not have the exact memories, but that specific smell of this material can be triggering. And if you don't know it, that's fine. It can trigger something else, but it's really trying to talk to perhaps the audience on many different levels and at many different places, depending on who they are, where they are, and also trying to address the idea of talking to the audience's own subjectivity, right? So I'm really trying to talk to a lot of different people at a lot of different times in different ways. Or that's my attempt.
I think it's really, I think it was really successful, and also the idea that was this a piece that someone could purchase and own?
Yes, so it is. I will say that it is dimensions variable. So this is now in a museum collection. So every time, this is the second time, surprisingly, that it has been put up by this institution. So any time that it goes up, it can go from like an inch to as long as they want to make that.
Wow, wow.
Yeah, because I think that sort of site responsiveness is can be really important to this, right? Like you can have this tiny little black like symbol of a black Cadillac, and with all the connotations that come with it, that can only be an inch long in a very strange place, or it can take up the whole room.
I love it. I love it. And for me, those conjure up so many memories of uncles and aunties that had a Cadillac and would only have a Cadillac, and especially the big bodied ones that, you know, they were making up into the 80s.
Oh yeah, no, that is exactly kind of the thing that I'm talking about, right? That is, they're all come from 70s and 80s bodies, times that you know, I give myself a lot of sort of rules about things, and this is an example of one of those rules. Like, because I only tend to want to deal with things that I can have direct experience with in my lifetime.
Yeah.
In general. So that's why this Cadillac doesn't have giant like 50s tail fins. I have no direct experience with that, and I'm not trying to talk about that time. I'm trying to talk about 1970 to now, right? And so that is a particular look and a particular type of body that I can identify with, and that I want to talk about those moments.
I love it. I love it. Well, here's another image that most of us can relate to. I don't know if you knew I was going to pull this one up, but I'm obsessed with it. And I wish that I had an image that showed the scale, the fact that these are the same height as you, right? And you're really tall.
Yeah, I am 6'2". So this is a piece called Legacy. I don't exactly remember the date. I guess it would be 98 or 99. This is 9 giant hair picks that form a circle that is meant to sit on a head like a crown. So I know about 2 years prior to this taking an actual form, I had been playing with a bunch of hair picks in my own head, taped to my head, stuck in my hair, to try to imagine these things making this form. And it just took the right moment and the right opportunity for it to come into fruition. What you don't see, I think, from this shot is that one of those tines is broken off, right? Which allows either access into or an escape from inside, because the thing, I mean, I really love this sort of early piece about all those things that we were talking about. What I always think is really interesting when I put this up, it actually has a far more menacing feel to me than I ever had intended it to feel. You know, again, I think about self-love and sort of trying to be proactive to things, but the few times that I've been inside of this, it really starts to feel cage and prison-like, and even sometimes coming up to it. So that sort of flip back and forth between sort of something that could be seen as celebratory to something that could be seen as almost punitive is really kind of interesting to me. And that certainly was not intended.
Yeah, and it has so many resonances today. And the wild thing for me is, like, as we're going through this, I mean, I recently spoke to an artist who spoke about, or just 2 weeks ago, spoke about the smell of pomade and what that conjures for him and his identity. And he was working around art, around hair. And then I won't name this artist, but another artist has also made a monumental, Afro pick into a public sculpture. And, but you're doing this way in advance of other people. So I wonder if those things
Okay, I'm gonna stop
linger
you
in
right
people's
there.
memory. You're gonna stop. I'm gonna make you stop me the whole time.
I'm gonna stop you right there because you make me feel old.
No. I was just telling someone, I was like, wow, I thought, when I first discovered your work, I thought of you as, someone who was much older. But then I came to realize, I was like, this man just came right out of school and started making art that was being shown in galleries, whereas a lot of us, it takes us a while. So.
No, I understand that. I feel incredibly lucky and privileged, and I have no idea how that happened. And so, when it strikes, you gotta attempt to take advantage of it.
Mm-hmm.
There was something else that you were just saying that I thought was really good. Oh well, I totally forgot it.
I'm sure we'll come back to it. Because I have a lot of images in here just because I want to hear you talk about all of them. I want to hear about all of these experiences, and your personal relationship with a lot of this imagery and how it later then comes back and reinforms later pieces of yours. And so I've heard you talk about stories about. It's funny. I have a kid that I'm also always telling that, and maybe I heard it from you. I don't know where I heard it from, or maybe it's a family thing of like, you're not Nordic. It's cold out there. Go put on a sweater, go put a hat on your head. And you have a similar story around how this piece came up, or these pieces came about.
Well, I grew up in a predominantly, probably 99% white, small college town in the middle of New York State. And so I guess during my semi-formative years, you're a teenager or so, you have your own ideas about how one should dress. And I would constantly get told by my father, it's true, put a hat on, put a hat on, you're not Nordic. He'd be like, you see all these college students, all these people in this town running around like that. That is not who we are, perhaps. And, just those, it's always interesting to think about the things that we hear, what sticks and what doesn't, right? And so for some reason, just that statement has always resonated and stuck. Maybe because in a way it was so ridiculous and so not ridiculous at the same time, and really sort of highlighted again the notion of difference that I have to do, that we'd have to deal with every day, regardless. So yeah, I thought because that stuck around for so long, it seemed interesting, and I found myself in someplace cold again. One of the great and many reasons that I live here in Southern California is because of the weather, because I grew up shoveling way too much snow and piling all that stuff on, and I didn't really like it. But anyway, so I really thought that was a really good way to talk about some things, right? To talk about this body of work with the snow and the sharks is basically about the two white things that can kill me, right? Which is the great white sharks and snow. So I really was trying to play with ideas of some stereotypical things that had been projected upon me at times. The notion that, oh, you're Black, you can't swim, right? So I know that's not true. I mean, because I can swim, but just that idea that myth becomes epic is really interesting to me. And the idea about what you look like can determine where you live. Again, the sort of like, I grew up where I could go skiing all the time in elementary school, right? It was gym class. And so that is not exactly the thing that dominant culture has has portrayed, right? So the ideas of representation that were not out there for me to see were right there for me to sort of have to figure out on my own and just deal with the fact that perhaps I am not Nordic. So I just get a large body of work around these two white things. And so here we have some neon icicles. Where I grew up, they get big enough to kill people. And so they are very dangerous when they fall off the roof. I was also very interested in using neon for the first time as a material. I like the idea that I can depict something that we understand is cold out of a material that is actually hot. That was really, really kind of fun and important. As I look at this now, I think about it as a drawing, which I have not really, I didn't think about it at that time or really up until right now to think about this idea of this operating also as a drawing. The snow-covered shark is just a take on a snowman, right? So that is a 8-foot-long great white shark covered with artificial snow. It's got sort of cabochon, big crystal teeth, eyeballs, excuse me, and clear icicle teeth. And so it just sort of sits there as a snowman would and does whatever they do.
Wow. I mean, I've only shown a few pieces and I got to get moving because I have so many more to get through. But, I think I may have even said this to you, but I see you as a chameleon with your artwork. There is this connection between pieces, and I'm excited to see this connection with what you're doing currently. But how do all these materials and styles of art making relate to each other, and how do they connect to the larger arc of your work?
See,
it's you. They all connect to you.
That's it. I understand that if you sort of look almost sometimes piecemeal at the practice, it can be look slightly disjointed. I tell my students often who, the few that also don't necessarily traffic in cohesive bodies of work, that's okay, that the through line through all of this stuff that we're seeing or you're seeing is me, and that's all that I have to worry about, right? So
I mean, that's yeah.
Yeah, I choose not to worry that, oh, this time it's a painting, this time it's this time it's a sculpture, it's a video. I think I have, again, given myself permission to use whatever is at hand and whatever materials and media is necessary to say what I want to say. And that the thing that is consistent is me. And perhaps that will not really ever be fully apparent unless you see everything together. I mean, I can occasionally, I can see what, the few times that I actually do a little navel gazing on the whole practice, I can see I can see certainly a lot of through lines that go through. Some go for a long time, some go and stop, some start and stop again. It's there is no consistency in my consistency.
I love that, and I'm gonna jump into some of them. I mean, these are the pieces that I think most of us who know you for. Because I mean, first of all, they're stunning, they're beautiful, they're things that most of us, when the first time you see one, you realize you have never seen anything like this ever in your entire life. And I'm gonna go to the next one. And this is a piece that we had at MOAD during the Black Refractions piece. And I think it's important for folks who are not familiar with this work to see, and the detail on the right side of your screen, that these are pony beads with braided hair in between. And I mean, I think, for me, this is also when you talk about that you didn't completely break away from painting. You know, these are paintings, but then when you come up, they're also sculpture. There's so many different things all at one time. And I think for me, it also is something that pulls together your practice and makes everything that went before and everything that came after this make a lot of sense for how you think about the production of your work. But I want you to tell everybody all about these things that I'm totally obsessed with.
Sure. I mean, you know, I like making these beaded curtains. Oh, goodness, I really I put a large pause on exhibiting them publicly for a while, and that is still on. I think just because everyone liked them too much. And so I needed to push back on that because it would almost be too easy to just make these and only make these. And I think I have a lot of other things that I wanted to say and still want to say. And so it was starting to turn into something that felt like it could be difficult to get out of in the future, unless I got out of it when I did. But they are still being made just on a far less grand and less amount scale. But basically, you know, I was just, you know, growing up, I had always wanted beads and braids in my hair, and I never got it. I saw boys with it. I never got it. I always loved seeing people with it. I really liked the times when I could walk through a beaded curtain in a relative's house, right, and go through the curtain. I liked Stevie Wonder, right? That there in the 70s, Stevie Wonder, that him with all the beads is burned into my head, whether it's from album covers or seeing him on television. There's just something about it that also, like, I think about the sort of the weirder aspects of it, like the Bo Derek 1970s version of that.
Yeah.
Those things sort of play in there a little bit, but basically I just imagine an image using the pony beads on someone's head, and it evolved rather over a few years into the forms that you see now.
Right. And we spoke a little bit before this also about labor and the meticulous nature of creating these, and how do you see that aspect playing? How does that play out in the work that you create even now? Now that you're not doing these?
Yeah, these are they are very labor intensive. The one on the right side of the screen, I mean, that's 12 feet long. And so since only 4 beads make an inch up and down, and about 20 to 21 are a foot in length in the math. I don't do any math beyond that. I will say that they are incredibly sort of labor intensive. And I don't know where that comes from, except the work demands that it be that way. And so I can't necessarily fight it, but I don't know if it is something that is intrinsic in the way that I think and the way that I work, but also with a little bit of hindsight, looking over all these years of this, I can see that there are hints of it and definite threads of labor intensity that go on. But, you know, it's really all in the service of the work. And I've made my peace with it, and it's almost like a Zen moment at times to get into the process of making these. As much as I complain about it and don't want to do it, at some point it shifts into a whole nother approach, usually right when I'm sitting in front of it, and it's a fun moment. And then it turns. I
love that. Yeah, no, and I love that you said you moved away from it, because did you feel like you said because people liked it too much, but do you feel like you were gonna get kind of pigeonholed into being the guy that makes the beaded curtains?
Yes, I was going to be the bead boy, and I have, this again, this kind of underscores some of the things we were talking about. Growing up where I am and being who I am. So there's really, I have no desire to be pigeonholed or to, I do have the desire to be understood, but I don't necessarily have the desire to be labeled in some way, or at least labeled from the outside. And I think, as we all know, unless you sort of self-define, somebody else is going to do it for you. So you better take care of that yourself. Where were we talking about? Oh, labor. I think we're talking about labor. So yeah.
I'm gonna keep jumping also while you do that.
Yeah. Okay.
No. Labor. Yeah.
Talk about this.
What's that?
You want me to just talk about this? I can just talk about
Yeah. I just also, transitioning from, these meticulous beaded curtains to this monumental scaled mirrored installation of these stairs that scare me.
It's another shift, right? So in a way, most of the curtains the majority of them deal with one type of, a certain type of imagery. Again, those rules that I gave myself, sort of suburban, rural, and exurban, which is the space between like the suburbs and the super country. So most of them traffic in that sort of imagery. And then after I really started to wind down on those, I realized that I would like to talk about some other things. But this comes like right in the middle of that full-on transition. So this is a piece called Rank from 2008. This is a show at LAXART. I guess it was my turn to have a show there at that point. And I produced this giant mirrored podium. So it was the summer of 2008, and I was really interested in the conversation going on at that moment about politics and celebrity, right? So we're coming up to the first election of President Obama. There's a lot of talk in the air that summer, a lot of chatter about a lot of different things about our role, right, as the voters in all of this. And so I was really trying to talk a lot about those things, right? What is our role in this conversation about politics and celebrity specifically? And so this is a giant mirrored podium that was my attempt to figure out a way to talk about those things. Right? You can't walk up it. I think people always think,
you can't. Okay.
But it is participatory. I am not a big maker of participatory work, right? The curtains, there's no like, oh, I'm gonna ta-da through the wall, right? You can't walk up this. They don't. I don't make many things that operate in that way. But yeah, this is just trying to question some of those things. Who are we? How do we play in this larger story?
It's brilliant. It's brilliant. And I'm glad you said that people didn't walk up, because I was like, how many people fell off?
No,
none of them.
Perhaps just like the things that it's trying to talk about, it is sometimes you are forced to just be an observer, right? And sometimes it is better to just be an observer and not a participant. But it all depends.
And I think this fire escape piece, the helix, is really similar. And I definitely heard you speak about this piece a few times, and the fact that the landings, or I don't know what you call them, they don't have any floors.
Right, there's no floor. I don't, this would be the first piece, Helix. I think this is 2006. So this is like the switch from the country sort of suburban things to definitely trying to tackle some of the more urban things in my experience. And so I had the opportunity to make this life-size clear acrylic fire escape. So it's just two sort of levels of the fire escape, but there is no floor, and it just sort of hangs there, freestanding in the space for us to sort of walk around it.
Now this urban and ex-urban environment, or very I guess suburbs. You grew up. You were born in the Bronx, right?
Yes.
And then moved to the countryside after that, or moved to the suburbs? Taken.
I was taken up to the middle of New York State at 3 months old, and pretty much between the middle, I mean, seriously, the geographic middle of the state, between there and New York City, mostly Harlem and the Bronx, throughout, until I turned 18 and plus. So weekends back and forth, it's like a 4-hour drive. So there is the experience of the country mouse and the city mouse. And so at this point in my life and practice, when this was happening, I was really saying goodbye to the country and hello to the city.
Beautiful. I want to remind our audience, we will get to it in a moment. I'm going to run over past 2, but please enter your Q&A, your questions into the Q&A tab or on Facebook, and we will get to them. I promise. It'll just be in a few minutes because I definitely want to get through all of these. Good.
Yeah, so I'm here.
Because I want to be here for the rest of the day with you. I get to hang out with Kori, so let's just keep going with this. You've ventured into billboards and making billboard art, and I understand this was one of the very first ones. And also, I think one of the significant pieces about is when you were approached with this project for these billboards, did you go out and create this piece, or how did this piece come about?
I was asked to participate in a show that was going to be billboards all over the city. And I had a few more ideas that I had proposed. And I wasn't really satisfied with those ideas. They were fine, but they weren't sort of giving me the oomph that I often look for. And I was looking around my studio at stuff and came across this picture, which is me as a kind of a self-portrait with a snowball in my mouth that had been taken about a decade prior to this. So this is probably 2010, I think this show was. And the image, I think, comes from 2001. I remember sitting somewhere in the Seattle area on a site visit, sitting in a very snowy driveway with a camera in my hand, and I just took off my shirt, made a snowball, shoved it in my mouth, and took a bunch of pictures, and not understanding what that would be or mean, but just something at that moment said, you need to do this. And so the images sat around for that decade, and then the right time and the right moment came, and there we have it. So it's just me with a snowball in my mouth. I mean, what I often talk about with this is that it gets read in lots of different ways, some sexual, right? And has been read as like a cotton ball, so sort of slavery issues or sort of oral sex, neither of which have shown up in my work prior to this. So I don't know necessarily why one would think that, but one can assume if you look at me, it's easy to think like, oh, it's a cotton ball and it's talking about slavery, all that stuff. What else do I want to say about this? Yeah, and it's part of a larger body of self-portraits that have been going on for a long time. I often think, well, if I don't have anybody else to sort of take a picture of, I don't want to have to deal with other people to try to direct things, I can just put myself into these positions to talk about the things that I want to talk about. And Also, a lot of them are really not about myself, Kori Newkirk, as the individual, but they really are. My goal has been to speak to the larger community, so that a lot of the self-portraits, my identity as the individual is often obscured, so that I can just almost decipher for like a black body, right? I can be all like a black, well, I guess it would be a black male body, but I can still be this sort of a symbol of that body without it sort of being a conversation about Kori. But it can be a conversation about that body in that situation, which I think is far more important for me.
Yeah, and I wish I had access to those images, but people can find them. You've shown them and talked about them where you were obscuring your face, also where you pixelated yourself, inspired by the Cops TV show. And I feel like at this point, I'm going to have to zip through some of your more recent work, unfortunately.
Yeah, sure. We can do this again, right? We can,
we should do this again, but I want to make sure. I would love to do a part 2 of this. But your work, again, I think it's just important that there's elements that find their way again into your work, and there's a certain language that you have in the creation of your work that finds itself repeated, but in a very different way. And that is something that really intrigues me about your work, and the fact that, you can have pop art, you can have abstraction, you can have these hyper representational, realistic, like depictions of a shark. And then you can go into this black rainbow. You can pop into these tires that, again, I'm gonna immediately reference these in my opinion, even though they're bikes and they're compact discs, and they make me think about the very first image of the Cadillac because of how stretched out it is. I don't know if that's intentional.
No, it's not. I mean, that is so interesting. I didn't even think about that piece with this. That's good looking out. No, really. I mean, I see other connections to this. This is another one of those works that what I will say is the source imagery for this that inspired this was up on my wall for 4 years, waiting again for the right opportunity and the right way for me to look at the things that I'm trying to think about, right? So I saw something that was similar, took an image of it so that I could remember it, and then just had to look at it for 4 years to let that thing really sort of soak into my subconscious, perhaps, to figure out the best way to translate what I'm seeing through myself and out into something completely different. So, I think that is that those are also the things that never get talked about too much, right? Like some of this, it takes time, right? Like I am often impatient, but that photograph sat around for 4 freaking years. Those other ones are in there for a decade. It's always really interesting how those things happen.
Yeah,
right?
I absolutely love that. And I love the fact that, like even just talking to folks who are beginning artists, those who've been in it for a while, or those who, are not artists at all, but appreciators of art, that you sit with things for long periods of time sometimes, and then they cycle back around into your work, such as this piece. And, I in the interest of time, I'll zip forward to how then this piece, which was the, I don't know, Mylar, I guess, hanging onto a photograph, then shows up into a piece that you do in Harlem.
I mean, I will. What I will say is that for some reason, I am very attracted to the vertical, right? I don't understand this, right? I see it in the curtains. I see it right in those photographs. I see it in this in this public work. I also am super attracted to circles. I don't, I really try my hardest not to overanalyze that, right? Because I feel like it would kill the magic and the thing that attracts me to this. But these are one of those connections, because when I look at these, I look at this piece, I look at the last one, I'm like, goodness gracious, Kori, is that all you do, right? Like, yeah, right, again, we're got something like this, but I guess that's okay too, right? I think that's okay, and I will credit this with the astute curator who sort of said, translate that here, right?
Wow.
So that actually helped, who was like, I'm interested in this. Can we sort of work together to sort of turn this into something in the public art realm, which, you know, I had never necessarily thought of, but I think that it turned out okay.
No, I think it's brilliant. I think it's absolutely brilliant. And then before I jump into the audience Q&A, I definitely want to go here, and I'm super intrigued. And again, the neon finds itself again, and I don't even know what I'm looking at because you didn't tell me anything about it.
Good. I mean, I have some other pictures of this. So this piece is from 2019, last spring, not this spring, but 2019, I think, in the spring. It is out in the desert. It is I think it's a 20-foot tall sort of black rainbow. So I was invited to be in a little arts festival out in a place called Borrego Springs. It is one of those international nighttime sky cities, so that there are no lights that shoot up at the sky, so people can come and look at the stars all of the time. And so when I was told that, I immediately thought, oh great, now I get to take advantage of almost utter darkness outside, because there's a lot of there's a lot of things that never come into fruition again, like things that wait for the right opportunity. And here I have been given an opportunity to work in a place that will allow me to make something that will be able to glow outside. And so I figured it out, because there's no outlets out there. So this is like a 20-foot tall arc that is wrapped with ultraviolet LED lights, so that is not only, it's like a black light rainbow, right? So I really, in terms of the things that kind of continue and are insistent, that would be the word that I might use. There are themes that are insistent, and that shape is very insistent, right? That half arc shape seems to be very insistent. The idea of light is very insistent. Black light, this is the second or third time that I have also used that for situations. Less because, it's black, I'm black, it's black light. I mean, that's probably part of it, but there is really something about, in my mind, the sort of the absence of light, perhaps, the sort of the opposition to the other light. So yeah, I just really wanted to make some weird stuff out there, and ended up making this giant nighttime, I consider this like a nighttime black rainbow. Like, what would that look like? Those are the kind of questions that go through my head. Like, can you make a rainbow at night? So what does that have to look like? Probably got to look like something like this, or it's a star.
I love it. Yeah, and I love that, by you making that choice, you're not creating the kind of light pollution that is obscuring people's vision of the sky. I don't know if that was intentional, if that had anything to do with the rules, but it shows very bright here. But just thinking about bright light, about black light, and the frequency of it, it's not something that everyone's going to see from miles and miles away within this. I don't know if that was intentional for you.
Yeah, I mean, you could see this thing from miles and miles away because there's nothing else out there on the edge of town out there. So yeah, it was I don't know, you know, I'm still trying. The thing is, as long as it takes sometimes for me to sit with things for them to be digested, sometimes it takes that same amount of time after it has been made to figure out what the heck I just made. And so in some regards, I am still trying to digest and chew on half of the work that we saw today, because but particularly like that last piece, I you know, it can be about so many things and about none of those things at the same time. So perhaps every time I talk about it, it might change for a little bit as I try to really get to the core of what it is that I'm doing.
And what is it that you're doing next? What can we expect to see from you whenever in the near future?
I mean, how can I answer that? I will say first and foremost that my goal has always been to keep everybody guessing each and every time, right? So I can't tell you what you will see next because I fully. There are some paintings being worked on. There are some curtains that just got, some smaller curtains that just got finished. There's some structure. You know, the studio is definitely a laboratory, but there is nothing really on my schedule right now, and that's fine because as I started right now, I feel like I should just keep my head down and make some work and continue to make work and not. Because I think it's not a good situation to wait, right? You can't just wait for all this mess to be over and then start to work because the people aren't waiting.
Yeah, exactly. I am gonna jump into the Q&A from our audience, and so our first question that we have is from our friend Bruno Wen, who says, "Hi, Kori. What would your dream project now or in the future be?"
Oh, hi, Bruno. Oh, Lord. You know what? That is a question that I never have an answer to, ever, ever, ever. And I don't know what it is. In fact, like 2 nights ago, I was thinking about that same question because I've been asked that before and my mind always goes blank. Yeah, I don't know. I just can't, I guess I just don't think like that, right? Like the dream project. Yeah, right. Every time I just go, ugh. So I don't know what project is.
Is it one of those things for you where
that dream yet? I have not had that reach that dream in order to go, oh, that's my dream project.
Do you feel like you've been able to realize most of the projects that you have envisioned, and where yeah, I like you said, I think you have a lot of freedom where we didn't talk about it, but you did have the one piece that I kind of had to zip past that had bodily fluids in it. I know you couldn't add the urine to it. We didn't talk about the piece with the little soaker, the little balls, but yeah, I mean, do you think maybe that is because you're such a chameleon, that when you go to a space and you have a proposal, no one is saying no?
Oh, please, they say no. Oh, I get
Do they?
I get more no's than we're going to talk about today about these things and the ideas, which part of me is when my head goes, will you please catch up? Could you please catch up to where what I'm presenting to you? But no, I don't know. I just, my mind just does not go there. I know that if I can visualize it in my head, I can make it. And if I visualize it, usually what I have visualized comes to fruition. But in terms of like, yeah, there's not been a dream project. The closest that I could say is that early on I had sort of goals. I had dream career goals, and I met those. They weren't necessarily on time, but I was able, and I'm reminded of this through my partner often, like that you had goals and you stuck your, you put your mind to it and you met those things, and that was amazing. So I think I need to do more of that.
I love it.
Maybe I can come up with what my dream project might be.
All right. I have another question from Kitsan, who first of all says we should just keep this going, or go ahead for part 2 of the conversation, which I'm all about. But what about her question is, what about the horizontal of the Cadillac and the wheels with the CDs? I guess I kind of pointed out, I'm seeing a connection of it, but what about the horizontal of that? Is that intentional? And also, I think, like you said, a lot of the pieces tend to be vertical. I'm thinking of the helix piece, even the stairs. But in a few of these, you're playing with this long horizon or horizontal shape.
Yeah, I don't. I don't even know. Honestly, I don't even know how to answer that. I love that question, because I have never even thought about so much about the horizontality of things. I mean, I often think about a horizon line. There are a lot of curtains with a massive long horizon line, and the notion of the horizontality and landscape is definitely ever so present in the work, but I don't know if it is something that I have consciously thought about, but I will now. Right, that's more stuff to like go.
We're gonna give you some more sleepless nights.
It's good because I can't step outside of, I think, as much as I wish I could step outside of my practice and really look at it objectively. I think I try often, but it is questions like that really help give me a greater insight into what other people see going on and how things are viewed and understood. So I appreciate that, and thank you so much.
Awesome. And then our friend Nikki Hager has a question about what has been the most challenging material or practice that you've employed as an artist?
Ooh, challenging. What does not work?
I almost feel like all of your work is inherently challenging for you as the maker. It
is, but those things that might not, that might get close to what that question is asking for, don't often see the light of day, right? They don't leave the studio so much, right? But I think that's just me tinkering a lot. What is difficult? I mean, it's last night I was talking about someone was like, oh, master of, jack of all trades, master of none. And I was like, I don't know about that. Let's go jack of all trades, master of all trades too. But, that's just in jest. There's got to be something. Again, my mind goes blank. Like, what does not work? Let's just say painting. That is always the
really.
Actually, yeah. No, I mean, I think the slippage and the challenge comes between in that interesting space between what my intentions are and what I want and what I know my skill set can do, because that is also a painter painters out of, I think, all types of artists, those are the ones that really need to work every day, right? That is the type of practice that you almost need to be in there, pushing that paint around, working on that every day in order for yourself to get better, the paintings to get better, all of that stuff. And I consider myself more of an object maker or generic artist, which does all that stuff. So there are times when I can just think about stuff or for a long time and then hurry up and like get that thing made versus the other kind of approach that I see serious painting practice needs to have. So that probably is one of my challenges as a material. Oh,
do you think that has something to do with schooling, perhaps, and the ideas of what good painting, and consists of that maybe others have projected on you? Because I also think about you moving away from it as your primary medium, and I just wonder if there's a connection.
I think it's about moving away from it. I mean, I don't even know what good painting is anymore or bad painting.
Who does?
It's so true. And things that I know that I would normally first look at and think that's bad painting usually ends up growing on me, right? As I give it time and it reveals itself. And the next thing you know, this thing that is abhorrent at first, I want to look at every day for the rest of my life. So it's kind of, I don't know. Yeah, painting. It's got baggage, and I'm just not interested in unpacking that baggage too much, right? So I don't.
Good.
I'm not interested in hitting my head up against the wall over and over again and sort of, why won't this work? What's wrong with this? Oh, painting. Screw that stuff. I got other things to think about and to spend my time on.
I love it.
Yeah, so the challenge will always remain a challenge.
Well, Kori, this has been absolutely fantastic. Again, I can spend, I literally, and I've said this with other artists before, but I definitely could spend the rest of the day talking to you because I just, first of all, I'm a super fan, but I think, I think that your openness to the interpretation to your work and also the way that you work through so many media and you don't even know what's coming up next for you. So I think that just leaves this ever fascinating component to your work to where I'm excited that you're going back to creating some beaded curtains and I can't wait to see what those look like. And I imagine they're gonna look like nothing like what I've seen before.
You are correct. I mean, they are, I will say that I think they are taking some turns because when they went away, the only way I realized if they're ever going to come back, they have to come back changed people, change things. But that being said, there is always something about if you make something go away or like you go away and you come back, you got to give people the greatest hits first, right? So it's what do you do? Does it come back sort of fully evolved into something else, or does it come back with what we sort of understand and expect? I have a feeling it's probably going to have to be some sort of mishmash of both of them to cover all my bases, but we'll see.
Maybe a little neon inside of it. We have a question, and I was about to go, but I have to ask this question because it's our friend Naeem Brown, who first off says, good painting is your boy Naeem Brown. And his question is, does Pan-Africanism enter into your thinking about Blackness, the experiential aspects that you use as impetus for your work?
Well, first, let me just say that, yes, he does make good paintings.
Yes, he does.
We went to undergrad together, he and I. So
what? No way. Yeah. Get out of here.
Yeah. Naeem and I went to undergrad together, graduated the same year and everything. And so he is a painter with a capital P. I would be a painter with a lowercase p. And it has been like that in these ensuing 20 plus years. But to answer his question, I will just say yes.
I love it. I love it.
It does come through, right? Like, I think I am a product of all my environments, and the thoughts and the underpinnings of what he's asking about. Yes, they are in there. They might not be, again, super clear. Some things need to be very embedded, and some things need to rise to the top or the forefront. But those ideas, I think, are in there. But I also, all of those ideas are in there. I am a firm believer in making the audience do some work. All right. So I think that if there's anything also that is really important for viewers and people to understand about the way I operate and the practice is, I think that I am presenting questions and options and things out to people, but without giving an answer. And I think in order to really figure out some of the things that are being said, you have to really do some work. First and foremost, right, you're going to get visual pleasure, right? Because I got to make something that looks good in order to seduce the viewer so that they can start to be open to tackle some of the harder things that I might want to talk about, right? Because there are always going to be people who are unable and unwilling to go there. But if I can at least give them something nice to look at, they are at least maybe a little more willing to start to tackle the harder subject matter that is also in the work.
I love that. That's my favorite kind of art. It absolutely is.
Sneaky.
I love it. I love it. Well, Kori, this has been fantastic. This has been a dream come true for me. I cannot wait to see you again in real life. And again, where can folks find out about what you have coming up next?
That is a good question. I mean, I guess I am messing around with Erica Redling Gallery now, but I also like to be that moving target a little bit.
Yes, you do.
I always think about like if we think about like David Hammons and how almost unavailable he is to sort of get your hands on, or like that, right? Very visible, but very invisible at the same time. So that's kind of my goal. So I wish I had some easier way to get a hold of me. I mean, you can follow me on Instagram, but that is a whole nother thing.
Yes, it is.
That is not about the practice in the way we necessarily talk today. But, I think I'm findable, but I don't, it's not easy.
Well, I appreciate you responding to me when I reach out. That really warms my heart. I guess so the next show is at, you said Erica whose gallery?
No.
No.
Erica Redling. I don't know if the show is there. Like I said, I don't really have anything on my schedule at the moment, which is okay. Sometimes that just happens.
Okay, well, so everyone out there, set a Google alert with your name. There we go. I guess that's the way to find out. And I will do the same. Kori, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much. I hate to go, but it's time for us to say goodbye. And I hope to see you really soon.
That would be great. And thank all of you who came and stayed with us. I appreciate it. Much love. Thanks.
Yeah. And I just want to let everyone know, if you joined this conversation late, this will be available on Facebook. And by the end of the week, it will be on Museum of the African Diaspora's YouTube channel. You can also go back and see all of our previous recordings. And you can also visit www.moadsf.org. Click on the calendar and you'll see all of the upcoming in the Artist Studio talks that we'll be doing through at least the rest of the year and into 2021. All right, thank you so much. And Kori, I will see you soon. Have a great one, brother.
You too. Bye, everybody.
Okay, bye, everyone.